Hello and welcome to another episode of Taking Back Saturday, a Happy Buyers Club podcast where we break down the real estate market each and every Friday and help home buyers build confidence, follow a process, and hopefully buy really happy. My name's Sam Hunter. I am back on the uncomfortable side of the desk this week, talking to one of Brisbane and Australia's best auctioneers. He's called thousands of auctions in backyards, front yards, dining rooms, bedrooms, and in rooms. He's won Australasian Auctioneer of the Year 3 times and is a 5-time winner, hopefully I've got this right, of the REIQ Queensland Auctioneer of the Year Award. If you see him in action at 8 o'clock on a Saturday morning, you can see why. He's cool, he's calm, he's collected. Justin Nickerson, welcome to the show.
Lovely intro. Thank you, mate. Wikipedia didn't let you down.
Your website didn't let me down.
Right. Much more accurate.
If there's one thing I know about auctioneers is they can talk about themselves.
Definitely can. Yeah. Definitely can.
Right, so I promise you we're going to keep this all about value for people looking to buy and people probably looking to buy at auction. So first cab off the rank. What's something that you see a lot of buyers get wrong about auctions?
Where do we start? I think the number one error that we see is a lack of a plan. So buyers will go in with a strategy, and I use the word strategy in loose terms of we're just going to see what happens, which is totally reactionary, and then basically are on the back foot immediately when the auction starts because you actually don't have a strategy. And then all you're doing is trying to come up with a strategy during the auction when there's pressure on, when there's some lunatic at the front yelling out numbers really fast, when there's other people throwing their hands up, when there's an agent in your personal space. And then instead of you shared a strategy before you walked in, and inactivity is not a strategy, it's a hope. And it's a hope like hoping you win the lotto without buying a ticket.
Cool. All right, let's talk strategy. Yep. I said to you, this will just go somewhere. Wherever we end up, we end up. I'm going to my first auction on Saturday. Yep. It's 8 o'clock in the morning. You're the auctioneer. What does my week look like leading into that to have a good strategy?
Well, I think the first thing about your week is you want to try and remove as many of the unknowns as you can. So most people, when they're looking to buy a property, will generally research the property pretty extensively. So they'll do their searches. They'll go through the property a number of times. They'll have a look on Google Maps. They'll drive the streets. They'll get a good sense for the property. That's a great start. So you want to make yourself as comfortable with the property as you possibly can. The second thing you want to do, though, is you want to research auctions. So if there's an auction the week before yours in the same suburb, a couple of streets away, go to it because it may give you a bit of insight as to how your auction is going to unfold. So see what happens. See what happens when they ask for an opening bid. See what happens when it doesn't reach a figure and they've got to pause and they take the highest bidder aside. See how quickly, if you know who the auctioneer is going to be, see how quickly the auctioneer is to go first, second, third. So much of the unknown you can remove and the research you can do, the better it's going to position you for actually the auction itself. And the other thing is just be really careful on who you take advice from. So there's a saying where everyone's entitled to an opinion, and that's probably true, but doesn't necessarily mean that the opinions are valid. So we see a lot of people and they'll come to an auction and they'll bring someone with them and that person all of a sudden becomes the dominant person giving them advice, but that person's no better qualified than them to provide that advice. Don't take advice from those that aren't better qualified than you to provide it. So someone that says to us a lot, I've bid at lots of auctions, and we say, okay, great, have you bought an auction? No, I haven't. They're the most unqualified person to provide advice because all of their strategy has been unsuccessful. So if you know a real estate agent or you know a buyer's agent or you know someone that you've got some sort of relationship with, give them a call as an independent person and say, hey, look, I'm thinking about bidding. What should I do? And get some advice from those people. But the 3 figures you really want to nail down that we coach every buyer to do is your dream figure, which I think you guys refer to as the Hawaii figure.
Price, yeah.
Yep. The fair figure, which I'm not sure what you guys refer to.
That's just fair market.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. And then the last one is we call the absolute.
That's our oh shit price.
Yeah, that's right. So if you get those 3 figures and you map those 3 figures out, and then basically between your dream figure and your fair figure, you should be sprinting. And between your fair figure and your absolute figure, you might be jogging or walking. There's your plan. And you just execute that plan. And the good thing about that plan is it's proactive and it forces others to react to what you're doing rather than you being on the back foot and reacting to what they do.
Our view is you've got to have a plan, you've got to have a strategy, you have to know those prices. Whether we're bidding on behalf of anyone or anyone who's listening to this, we say to everybody, write down what that last price is. Have it literally written in front of you because emotion takes hold on the day and you can go, we'll just go another 5. And if you had another 5 there, you haven't planned correctly enough. Like my view is you should feel the pressure on the Thursday before the auction, not at the auction. Have the argument ahead of time. Stress each other out before you're pulling your phone out, doing your numbers on your calculator. just to figure out, can we bid more? Because you'll set yourself up to hopefully buy it. But worst case, you're going to walk away comfortable knowing that somebody else has paid beyond where you saw value. And that's still a win. You've learnt a hell of a lot. By the time the next property comes up that you're going to auction, you probably can execute on your strategy a little bit more, or you have more depth to the planning so that you get there with a better strategy.
Have you? This is a very random reference. Have you seen the movie Draft Day?
No, I haven't.
Kevin Costner in it. It's about an NFL draft. Anyway, the premise of the movie is that it follows the GM on draft day of one of the teams, the Cleveland Browns. Anyway, he eventually drafts this guy called Vontae Mack, and on his little piece of paper he has, which he carries around all day, it says Vontae Mack no matter what. And I think it's the same with buyers. Is you're exactly right. Is if you write down those three figures and you have them in front of you, you've just got to follow that plan. The clear distress signal we see a lot of buyers make is they will pull out their phone and start to do the calculations mid-auction.
For sure. Calculate a couple.
You're under pressure, like you've got everyone looking at you, like you're not going to make a clear decision at that point in time. Or they start to have those conversations between husband and wife and they say, oh, shouldn't we? And they're going backwards and forwards while, again, some person's at the front going, first time now, second time now, like, oh, it's all the walls are closing in. So you're exactly right. Have those conversations before the day when, the bullets aren't flying. And then that way, just try and execute your strategy as best you can on auction day.
I think the moment you start having those conversations, we've all seen it. Like it's like the panicked, almost defeated look that a couple will give each other. And most people are buying in a couple. Sometimes you're there by yourself, but that's the moment of weakness that either an auctioneer senses or worse, the other bidders do sense as well.
Yeah. We call it the wounded gazelle. So you're like a wounded gazelle with a broken leg who's dragging the leg around, and then all you need is a big predator to see that, and they'll strike aggressively.
And real estate is a weird place.
It is a weird place, mate. Yeah. And
100%.
this is not even close to the weirdest conversation we've had in the last 10 minutes.
Isn't
so
that
it's not
true?
even top 5. So there you go.
All right. So we've got a strategy, right? We're not going to pull our phones out. Outside of just having the capacity and the willingness to keep bidding, are there any other strategies that you would offer the listeners to buy successfully at auction?
Yeah, and that's the rider on it, is that if someone wants it as much as you do and has a bigger budget, there's not a strategy in the world that's going to help you succeed. The best advice that I can give, and any friends and family that ever asked me bidding at auction or that we've sort of deployed when we've been bidding at auction, is bid quickly. So bidding quickly does two things. The first thing is that it gives the impression that you're not worried about price.
Mm-hmm.
Your budget's never ending. Now, that may not be true, but you're giving that impression. And sometimes it's about faking confidence if you don't have it. The second thing, though, and this is the most important one, is it constantly transfers the stress of decision-making onto your opposition. And that's such an underrated thing.
Sure.
Because if you've got your bid ready to go and they're talking about it, oh, should we? Oh, okay, yeah, we'll go 5 more. And they bring it back to you and you go, bang, 5. And it goes straight back across to them. They're under pressure because they're making a decision again.
They're a wounded gazelle.
Yep, exactly. But you might be making the decision while they are, but they're not seeing that because they're trying to make their decision. And they go, oh, should we? Oh, well, we're getting close, so let's slow down. 2.5. Oh, bang, 5. And it goes straight back again. And they're like, this person's not going to stop. So that bidding quickly is really important. What most people do is they want to firstly sort of drag it out. So they kind of, you open up at a low figure and then they want to place low bids straight away and turn into a game of Survivor. That's not going to be successful. But the second thing is as soon as they start to get to the uncomfortable levels, they send clear distress signals. Bidding quickly up to your number, that's why they're having a plan so important, up to your number, just shows that you're not deterred. Hey, we're going to keep going, we're going to keep going, we're going to keep going. Now, you may be a bit away from stopping, but you're not showing that, and that's really important.
Agreed. Help me understand the role of an auctioneer, right? So you do more for an agent and for a seller than just rock up at 8 o'clock on a Saturday and yell at people in the street, right? So walk me through that process. When do you get involved? What's your involvement? What does that look like? Because I think that's important for a buyer to understand that it is more than just the showmanship for 15 minutes on the day.
Yeah. No, we rock up at 7:58.
You do sometimes.
We do, yeah. Well, sometimes 8:02, but let's not talk about that. I think the role of an auctioneer, we refer to ourselves as the final 3%. So the agent is the 97% of the campaign, and the large amount of the legwork is done by the agent. Therefore, the large amount of kudos needs to go to the agent. Where the auctioneer plays a role is twofold. The first thing is effectively the finishing touch on the campaign. So their job is to create excitement and energy between bidders and competition and foster competition. The second role that the auctioneer plays, particularly here in Southeast Queensland, is the role of negotiator. So if we end up with a gap between where the buyer is and where the seller is, which is most common with auctions, particularly in the market at the moment, the auctioneer's role is to try and close down that gap. Now, why the auctioneer and not the agent is sort of two reasons. The first reason is that the auctioneer doesn't have relationships with either party before it starts, which is important because they've never had the buyer say things to them. They've had the seller say things, so they're negotiating with clear air. But the second thing, and this is the really important one, is the auctioneer is paid a fee for service and not a fee for outcome. So because the agent is getting paid a fee for outcome,
There's bias
yeah,
or the perception of
the
bias.
perception of bias. Sometimes it's not. Well, most of the time it's not bias, but it's perception of bias. A seller's sitting there saying, "Oh, you're just telling me this because you want to get paid." Whereas I can walk in a different space and say to them, "You should really be looking very closely at this," and there's no benefit to me. So I'm not saying it to further my own interests. I'm saying because I genuinely believe it. But in terms of our involvement, it's a little bit agent by agent specific. Some agents like us to be really involved in campaigns. So that may mean that we're reading seller reports, we're having conversations with the owners prior to the auction day. Whereas other agents like us just give them a call the week of the auction, maybe a bit of morale boosting or a bit of reinforcement, and then turn up on the day and be the best possible version of ourselves then. So it's a little bit case by case basis. But our job is to potentially either finish the campaign or if it's one that's not going to sell, to leave the campaign in a better position than it was when we walked in the property.
Let's talk about not necessarily ones that don't sell, but you mentioned there before your role is to get in and have those almost courageous conversations to say, you should really be looking at this. What happens behind closed doors when an auction pauses?
That's where the magic happens.
Yeah,
hey?
Isn't it? That's that service fee you were talking about.
Yeah, that's right. You say courageous conversations. What I think a lot is that we get paid what we do, particularly as auctioneers, because we are getting paid to be comfortable in uncomfortable conversations or situations.
Yep.
So we walk into a room, we've got the sellers in the master bedroom, the buyers are in the media room. You got a buyer that doesn't want to overpay for the property. You got a seller that doesn't want to undersell the property. And our job is to mediate between those two conversations. So without going into kind of dialogue line by line, the two things that we go back to is one is that we are direct. So we confront things. So if we've got a buyer that says, oh, we're not going to move, or we confront that and say, well, if that's your situation, you're not going to buy the property. I'm here because I'm assuming you want to try and buy it and we're here to help you. Same with the seller. Oh, that's our reserve. We're not moving. Well, guys, you're going to be retaining the property, which is your right because it's your asset. But I'm assuming because you've invested a lot in marketing, you've been in the market for 4 weeks, you've tidied up your house every day for the last 28 days that you do want to sell it. Let's work towards that outcome rather than just stubbornly saying there. So the first thing is we're direct. But the second thing is we be honest with how we see things. So if we see a seller that is ignoring market feedback, we're honest enough to call that out. We made a situation going back to auction last week where there's been 3 offers prior, one at 1.3, one at 1.35, one at 1.37. The bidding got to 1.4. Our owners had a reserve of 1.7. Now, we could walk in there and have a kind of soft conversation. Oh, do you want to accept the 1.4? No, we're not selling you that. Oh, okay, well, we'll pass it in. We'll see how we go with the buyer post-auction. But that's not what we're getting paid to do. I'm getting paid to tell the truth. We can say, guys, you've had every bit of evidence presented to you from this market. Every bit of evidence suggests this property sat in the 1.3s. The great news is we've got a buyer at 1.4, and there may even be some upside on top of that. But the reality is if you are genuinely chasing 1.7, then you're going to have to wait for this market to turn to get your number. And it's up to you if you want to accept that or not. So I can have that conversation again because they don't look at me like, oh, you're just telling us this, so you want to get your $1,000 or whatever it might be. Like I've already been paid. Yeah. The best outcome for me is actually you make a quick decision. That's the best outcome because then I'm out of there and on to my next auction. I'm doing this to try and help you understand. So is that a courageous conversation? If courageous is the right word, it's definitely an uncomfortable one, but that's what we get paid to be, is comfortable and uncomfortable conversations. One of the words used there to describe me, which I'm still going through that bio in my head as you mentioned it to me, but one of those words you used a lot is calm, and that's what I've really tried to create as a hallmark of the way I operate is calmness. So whether that's auction call calmness, whether that's negotiation calmness, I see my role as being the most unemotional person. So I stay at a baseline here, don't get sucked up, don't get sucked down. I just stay in that sort of calm state, hopefully.
I think there's a reason why people follow you. They follow your auctions. They go to your auction to get a barometer of the market, and it's because there's a professional spiel, not an over-the-top spiel. Nobody's yelling. You're not rolling your R's when you're counting bids and things like that, right? And I think that for the punters in the marketplace who are trying to do that research that you spoke about earlier, that are trying to genuinely understand what they might have to pay for the similar property next weekend, the way you go about things, the way you handle yourself, that cool, calm, collected nature is gives them the opportunity to actually learn something rather than get yelled at in a front yard for 15 minutes and then the guy rocks off in his BMW, right?
Yeah, I've got a Mercedes, so not
Yeah.
a BMW, just to be clear. So two things on that, I guess. The first thing is the cool thing about auctioneering is there's so many different styles. So whether your style is quicker, louder, whatever, that's up to you. One of the biggest hallmarks of every great auctioneer, I believe, is authenticity. So we say this to our team all the time, that if I'm having a conversation with you and I leave this conversation, I stand up there and I call an auction, and then I leave that auction, I come back and start talking to you, I should be the same person. So there should be no change to who I am, because I'm not doing a stage show or a performance. Auctioneers that I guess struggle with that authenticity part, it does feel like a show. Like they leave who they are genuinely, put on a bit of a show, and then go back to it. So as long as you're being authentic to your true self, then there's no problem with what your style might be. I guess my personal style is I'm pretty laid back, I think. I'm pretty calm. So that's kind of why I want to call it auction. Like for me to have that kind of really burst and excitement and, the whole large volume, that's not me. And if I try to do it, I'm going to be a really poor imitation of others that do it better than I do. All I can do is be the best version of myself. But the one change with auctioneering that we talk about a lot is that it's moved from intimidation to engagement. So 10 or 15 years ago, the role of an auctioneer was predominantly male, which now thankfully is changing. They were the big dominant figure at the front of the crowd. They yelled at people, they intimidated people, they made people feel small. They basically said, I'm the master, and if you want to buy this property, you go through me. That's been a big shift now to engagement. So our theory is, how do we make buyers feel good and relaxed? Because if they feel good and relaxed, they're more likely to feel comfortable.
You get a good result.
Property. Exactly.
For sure.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to, so there are moments during auctions, and I'm going to come back to that pause moment where buyers don't necessarily feel calm and relaxed,
of course, right? Yeah.
So I'm a buyer. I'm holding the highest bid. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, we're just going to go on pause and take some instructions from ourselves. We're going to negotiate with the highest party. I'm in the master bedroom. They're in the media room. Give anyone listening or give me some advice as to how do I play that situation best?
Firstly, you can't say ladies and gentlemen anymore. It should be a banned word at auction, because now it's we're gender inclusive. So that'll be a banned term in auctions pretty shortly. Play it with an open mind. That's the first thing. So we have buyers that'll walk into that with a fixed mindset. So they'll go in and say, I'm not moving. Well, okay, we'll go back out then, because we're not going to be buying the property. So have an open mind, listen, and take as much time as you need to work through decisions. But also understand the benefit of being in that room at that point in time. So the two biggest benefits you're going to have, the first one is you're going to learn the price that no one else knows. So for 4 weeks, the agent's been hounded by every person asking them, what's the price, what's the reserve, what's the seller going to take, and they can't legally answer that. At that moment, it's the first moment that we can legally tell you what it's going to take to buy it. So you're going to have access to information that no one else is going to have. That's the first thing. The second thing is that you've bought time. So you bought time to make decisions. So that time period of negotiation can be anything from 2 minutes to an hour in that bedroom. And what you have is a direct line where you can go backwards and forwards to the owner and get feedback on your offers, which you can't have after the auction. You're in negotiation in isolation. So there's no one else negotiating. It's just you. And all the other people outside don't know what's going on. So let's say we go inside $1 million. After a 25-minute break, we eventually get it to 1.2, just to use round figures. And then we go outside and we say we're now selling the property at 1.2. The biggest advantage you have as a buyer at that moment is, firstly, no one else can buy it for 1.2. So you can buy it for the lowest possible price, because if someone wants to buy it, they have to pay more. So they've lost the ability to buy it for 1.2. Only you can do that. But the second thing is all those buyers that were waiting outside, that were crossing their arms and saying, we're waiting to come on the market, we're waiting. They have no idea where the bid's at. They think it's $1 million. So we're going to walk outside. We're going to say the bid's now at 1.2. We're now selling, and those buyers get forced into a snap decision. They have 35 seconds to make a life-changing decision. Do we bid and buy this property or not? And you, because you're in front and you're in control, you had 25 minutes to make the same decision. Time is a good thing with auctions, but it's the best thing with buyers, because it gives you time to make the right decision.
For sure. Are you clarifying then with your buyers that even though they've got an increased bid, there's a risk that someone else out there in the crowd still puts their paddle up?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Because there's no provision to withdraw and sell in Queensland. And some states, and in New Zealand in particular, there is. So we can go in a back room in New Zealand and never come back out.
Naughty.
Yeah. It's it changes the dynamic, because people really compete to be that person in the back room.
Yeah.
you can walk out of New Zealand and say, we've got an agreement at $1.2 million. Property is now withdrawn and sold to Sam. Like,
what an advantage to buy a house in Queensland versus New Zealand at auction.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, I think we make it clear, and they say, oh, well, there's no other way to do it. That there's no other way. It has to go back out on the floor. But the advantage you're going to have is going to cop people on the hop. Maybe, though, just take 15 seconds now or 30 seconds now before we walk back outside and think if someone bids 1201 or 1205, what are you going to do?
What's that ocean
Don't tell
price?
don't tell me what it is, but you tell me what you're going to do. If it sort of happens at that point in time.
Very good. Justin, I know you're a busy man. I've got one more question for you
Sure.
before we leave, and that is, what is your tip for buyers to take to auctions this weekend?
Be prepared. I'll give you 3 tips. Be prepared. Have your 3 figures. And lastly, now I remember I was listening to your podcast a couple of weeks ago about bidding at auction tips. Really good podcast, by the way. Well done.
Thank you.
One stray that I copped that I didn't like was you said something about that agents and auctioneers can make up a lot of statistics. The one statistic that I'll stand behind 100% is 68% of times the opening bidder buys the property. Now, I know this because it's a data point that we track as a business. And I know you wouldn't question the integrity of our business. So I know that wasn't your intention. But like, if you get out in front early, you make everyone else chase you. And sometimes you being confident can intimidate your opposition, keeps them out of the bidding, gives you a better chance of buying the property.
For sure. I definitely don't dispute that statistic, but I also don't dispute that it serves the selling agent and the sellers also very well.
Unquestionably. But again, it comes back to the fact that if you want to buy at auction, you've got to bid.
For sure.
If you don't bid, you can't buy it.
And that's why you got to have a plan. Justin, thank you. From everybody listening, from Chase and I, that was awesome. We really appreciate your time.
Thanks, mate.